The sky above Karath's reach burned with pale fire. At dusk, the horizon shimmered as if the world itself was exhaling heat, and the twin suns sank behind the ridged hills of iron ore. The mining colony was small, little more than a smear of habitation domes and ore crawlers clinging to the side of a canyon, the color of dried blood. The wind carried metallic dust, and it whispered against every surface, etching slow ruin into glass and steel alike. Commander Renn stood on the outer deck of the habitat's main tower, watching the last light fade. He was a broad man, his skin permanently tanned by radiation filters that only half did their job. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and the faint sweetness of algae, human life carved from poison. His hands, rough from years of work and war, rested on the rail as he waited for the evening shift horn. They had been on Karath's reach for 7 years now, cut off from Earth by both distance and politics. The war had changed everything, their understanding of strength, of purpose, of what it meant to be human in a galaxy that had decided they were an inconvenience rather than a species worth saving. The alien coalition that had once called itself the Concord of Wills, he spat at the memory of that name, had united 6 empires to halt humanity's spread beyond the Orion Arm. Their envoys spoke of balance and preservation, but the fleets they sent brought fire. Earth's outer colonies had been bombarded into glass. Whole cities had vanished beneath orbital storms, and yet humanity did not die. It endured. The colonies that survived turned inward, building and adapting, learning from defeat. The humans on Karath's reach had once been miners for a corporate syndicate. Now they were soldiers, engineers, and survivors. Renn's second in command, a woman named Kira Sanath, approached across the deck. She walked with the confident precision of someone who had been born to vacuum work and low gravity. Her hair was braided tight against her scalp, her face marked by old burns. "Commander," she said, stopping beside him. Long-range sensors picked up movement again. Out past the ridgeline near the old relay station. "Another meteor storm?" Renn asked without turning. Kira shook her head. "Too regular, too slow." He frowned. "Show me." She handed him a small pad. The data feed flickered, showing grainy visuals, 3 blips crawling across the dark. Their heat signatures were faint, masked by ion interference, but the pattern was unmistakably artificial. "Could be scavengers," Renn said. "Or scouts," Kira replied quietly. The word hung between them like a warning. Scouts meant the Concord. Scouts meant death. Renn exhaled through his nose and handed the pad back. "Triple the perimeter drones. Recall all crawlers to the inner mine grid. If it's scavengers, we can deal with them. If it's something else..." He looked again toward the horizon, where night was gathering like a slow tide. "Then we do what we've always done." "Endure?" she asked. He gave a humorless smile. "Fight." The interior of the command dome hummed with the constant pulse of machines. Screens glowed against the dimness, each one a window into the fragile web of systems that kept the colony alive. Oxygen reclamation, thermal regulation, reactor flow. Renn passed between the stations, nodding to his crew, 20 souls running what had once needed 200. At the main console, a young technician named Merrin looked up. His eyes were sharp, though his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the comm relays. "Signal distortions getting worse, sir. Solar interference from the second sun is bleeding into the bands. Keep a clean channel to the outer probes," Renn said. "I want constant updates on those contacts." Merrin nodded and bent to his work. The boy was barely 20, born on a transport ship after the evacuation of Kepler's Gate. He had never seen Earth, had never known what rain felt like. To him, the stars were home and the ground was a cage. Renn moved on, pausing at the reactor display. The power core was holding steady, though the margins were thinner than he liked. Every kilowatt they spent on defense meant one less for life support, but defense came first. Always, Kira's voice came through the intercom. "Commander, drones 3 through 9 are in position. Visual contact pending." "Understood, I'm on my way." He stepped into the lift tube and descended to the observation bunker beneath the dome. The walls here were thicker, reinforced with alloyed slag from the mines themselves, a fortress grown from the planet's bones. The display wall came alive as he entered. 9 feeds from the perimeter drones showed the barren expanse beyond the colony, each camera sweeping slowly across dunes of dark iron dust. The night sky above was a storm of stars. "There," Kira said, pointing to one of the screens. A faint movement, barely perceptible, rippled along the edge of a dune. Renn zoomed in. The shape that emerged was low and angular, moving with mechanical precision, not a natural formation, not a scavenger rover either. Those were clumsy, patched together from whatever parts could be found. This thing moved like it had purpose. "Machine?" Renn asked. "Looks like it. Unknown configuration." Another flicker appeared beside it. Then another, 3 in total. Renn's jaw tightened. All drones switched to active targeting, mark coordinates. The drone feeds shifted as targeting reticles snapped into place. The shapes froze, as if aware they had been seen. Then, without warning, they scattered, one burrowing beneath the sand, the others darting away at incredible speed. "Tracking lost," Merrin's voice echoed over the intercom. "They're jamming the signals." Renn slammed his hand on the console. "Full alert. Lock down the colony and power up the point defenses." Sirens wailed through the domes, a rising howl that sent workers scrambling. The lights dimmed as energy was rerouted to the defense grid. Kira turned to him. "If they're scouts, they'll report back." "I know," he said grimly, "which means we have limited time before the main fleet decides to pay us a visit." The night stretched long. No attack came, but no sleep did either. Renn remained in the bunker, watching the static-laden feeds as the desert shifted under starlight. His mind drifted to old memories of ships burning in orbit, of the screams over comms when Earth lost contact with her colonies. He had been a soldier then, commanding a frigate during the retreat from the Sirius line. They had fought until the fleet was dust, until even the stars seemed to abandon them. Kira entered quietly, carrying 2 metal cups of distilled synth coffee. "Still nothing," she said, "no more contacts." He took the cup with a nod. The drink was bitter, but it kept the exhaustion at bay. "They're watching us," he murmured, "testing the response times, our defenses, measuring how long before we panic." "Do you think they'll hit us?" Renn's eyes narrowed. "Eventually, the Concord never leaves loose ends." Kira hesitated, then asked, "Do you ever wonder if they're right, that we're the problem?" He looked at her sharply. "I mean," she continued, "they say we expand too fast, consume too much. Maybe to them, humanity looks like a virus spreading across worlds, changing everything we touch." Renn set down his cup with a quiet clang. "Maybe we are, but a virus adapts. It survives. That's what they fear." He stood, pacing toward the viewport slit. Beyond it, the desert gleamed faintly under twin moons. "They want a quiet galaxy, frozen, predictable. They can't understand us because we build meaning out of chaos. They look at a barren world and see something to preserve. We look at it and see a future." Kira watched him in silence. "Let them come," he said finally. "We'll show them what happens when they corner humanity." By morning, the colony was locked into full defense posture. Surface cannons tracked across the horizon, drones swept in wide arcs overhead, and the minus-turn soldiers checked their rifles with mechanical discipline. Merrin's voice crackled over the comm. "Commander, I think I've got something on the long-range channel. It's faint, but it's repeating. Let's hear it." A burst of static filled the room, followed by a voice, metallic, distorted, speaking in a language none of them recognized. The tone was rhythmic, deliberate, as if transmitting a message rather than noise. "Translate algorithm can't parse it," Merrin said. "Too many layers of encryption." Renn frowned. "Record it, keep scanning." It could be a probe beacon. Hours passed. The colony moved like a machine, every person knowing their task, every motion efficient. Humanity's gift had always been adaptation, and on this dead world, it had become an art form. But when the storm came, all that precision nearly shattered. It began as a tremor beneath the ground, subtle at first, then building into a rolling quake that made the domes shudder. Outside, the dunes erupted as hidden machines clawed their way to the surface. Sleek insectoid constructs the size of armored transports. Alarms screamed. Renn was already running before the first impact hit. The creature's machines, whatever they were, fired beams of white heat that cut through defense turrets like paper. "Get everyone below ground," he shouted into his comm. "Form fallback lines around the reactor." Kira's voice answered, fierce and calm. "Understood," firing squads in position. The colony became a battlefield in seconds. Plasma bolts seared through the dust-choked air as humans fought against the advancing tide of metal. The ground shook with explosions, the acrid scent of burned circuitry mixing with blood and ozone. Renn ducked behind a wall of shattered steel, pulling a wounded miner to cover. "Medic," he bellowed. The man's chest was burned, his breath ragged. "They came from underground," he gasped. They were waiting. Renn's heart pounded. If they had burrowed beneath the sensors, then they'd been here longer than they realized, watching, studying, preparing. Kira appeared beside him, her armor scorched. "We can't hold the surface much longer." "Then we make them pay for every meter," he growled. He raised his rifle and fired at one of the constructs. The shot struck its head, tearing through layers of plating until sparks burst from within. The machine staggered, then collapsed with a heavy crash. Others swarmed forward, stepping over their fallen. "Fall back," Kira ordered. To the inner defenses, they retreated through collapsing corridors, sealing bulkheads behind them. The colony trembled as more explosions echoed above. Inside the reactor chamber, dozens of survivors gathered, dirty, bleeding, but defiant. The great core pulsed with light, the heart of their survival. Renn took a breath, wiping grime from his face. "If we lose the reactor, we lose everything." Kira nodded. "We can rig overload charges on the auxiliary lines. If they breach this level, we blow it and bury them." Renn met her gaze. "And us." Her expression hardened. "Better us than being dissected by the Concord." He hesitated, then he nodded. "Do it." The survivors moved quickly, setting explosives, securing entry points. Each of them knew what it meant, one last stand on a forgotten world. When the first machine broke through the lower hatch, Renn was waiting. He fired point blank, the recoil slamming into his shoulder. The creature's body convulsed and burst into shards of glowing metal. Behind it came others, undeterred. The humans fought like beasts cornered by extinction itself. They screamed, bled, and refused to die quietly. As the reactor alarms began to blare, Kira shouted over the chaos, "Charges are set." Renn's vision blurred from smoke. He looked around at the people who had followed him for 7 years, miners, mechanics, orphans of Earth, and saw in their faces not despair, but something older, the will to live, the human fire. He slammed his palm on the detonator. Light consumed the world. When awareness returned, it came in fragments, sound first, then pain, then light that stabbed through the darkness behind his eyelids. Renn opened his eyes to find himself lying beneath a collapsed support beam. The air was thick with smoke and the metallic taste of blood. He coughed, forcing himself upright. The reactor was silent, dead. The once bright pulse at its core had gone cold. Around him lay ruin, twisted metal, bodies. He staggered forward, searching. "Kira," he called hoarsely. A faint movement drew his eye. She was pinned beneath a slab of wreckage, her armor cracked. He heaved the debris aside and knelt beside her. Her eyes fluttered open. "Still alive, Commander," she whispered, a faint smile ghosting her lips. "Barely." She coughed, blood flecking her chin. "Did it work?" He looked around at the shattered chamber. The machines were gone or melted into the slag that coated the walls. "For now," he said. Kira nodded weakly. "Then we bought time, that's something." Renn gripped her hand. "You'll be fine, we'll get you out." But she didn't answer. Her fingers went still. He sat there for a long time, listening to the settling echoes of a dead world. Then he rose, shoulders heavy, but eyes burning with something fierce. Humanity had been driven to the edge of extinction before. It would not die here. Not while he still breathed. He looked toward the surface hatch, where faint daylight seeped through cracks. Somewhere beyond the dust and ruin, there were still humans alive, and perhaps, just perhaps, a way to strike back. He started walking. When Renn climbed through the cracked surface hatch, the first thing that struck him was the silence of aftermath, not peace, but the fragile quiet left when all motion dies. The air was heavy with the smell of ozone and scorched alloy. The twin suns had risen again, pale and cold, and their light revealed a landscape remade by fire. What had once been Kareth's Reach colony was now a graveyard of fused domes and shattered towers. Black smoke rose in slow spirals, curling into the cloudless sky. The ground was littered with the broken carcasses of the enemy machines, metal twisted and melted into grotesque forms. Some still twitched faintly, as though dying nerves refused to surrender to the inevitable. Renn stepped carefully among the ruins, his boots crunching over glassy sand. The detonations had vaporized half the lower levels, sealing the tunnels and burning out the burrows, but it had cost them everything. He saw no movement, no survivors, only the dry wind moaning through the wreckage. He reached what had been the central plaza, a ring of collapsed domes around a crater where the reactor tower had stood. The heat shimmer rising from it made the air ripple like water. At the crater's edge, a single defense drone still functioned, its chassis blackened, but its targeting array sweeping slowly, faithfully, as if awaiting orders that would never come. Renn approached it and knelt. The drone recognized him by the colony insignia still scorched on his armor. Its photoreceptors flickered weakly. "Unit 9, status report," Renn said. Its voice was faint, distorted by damage. "Hostile presence neutralized. 98% colony destruction. 96% personnel casualties. Reactor output 0. Atmospheric processors offline." Renn's throat tightened. "Any survivors detected?" "Negative." He stared down at the sand, fists clenched. The wind tugged at the edges of his coat, carrying away the faint ash of what had been his world. "Deactivate," he whispered. The drone's light dimmed, then went out. He remained kneeling for a long moment, head bowed. Then he rose, shoulders straightening under invisible weight. If he was truly the last, then he would be the one to carry memory forward. Humans had died in countless corners of the galaxy before, scattered to dust and legend, but never in vain. Each loss became a seed for vengeance, for endurance. He would find a way to turn even this ruin into a beginning. He needed supplies, weapons, and transport. There had been an auxiliary hangar carved into the canyon wall 2 kilometers north, a sealed bay for maintenance shuttles. If the shockwave hadn't collapsed it, there might still be something usable. He set off, the sun beating down as he walked through the bones of the colony. His steps left shallow impressions in the fine dust. Above him, thin contrails streaked across the sky, meteor trails, perhaps, or debris from the battle. The air tasted faintly of rust. At the edge of the canyon, he paused and looked back once more. Kareth's Reach lay spread out behind him like a wound, its smoke rising in soft grey plumes. He whispered a wordless promise to those buried beneath and turned away. The hangar entrance was half buried beneath rockfall. Renn cleared it with careful effort, prying loose slabs of fused stone until a gap opened wide enough for him to crawl through. Inside, the air was cool and dry, preserved by the hangar's partial shielding. Emergency lights still glowed along the floor, casting a dim orange hue across the cavernous space. 2 shuttles rested within, small atmospheric craft, one clearly beyond repair, the other covered in dust but intact. The intact one bore the markings of the old mining syndicate, its hull dull silver and its landing struts sunken slightly into the sand. Renn felt a flicker of grim satisfaction. He climbed aboard, the hatch creaking in protest. The interior smelled of stale air and lubricant. He moved through the narrow corridor to the cockpit and powered the systems. The console flickered to life after a long pause, and the ship's voice, a cold, synthetic monotone, spoke. "Power grid operating at 28%, fuel reserves minimal, navigation database corrupted." "It'll do," he muttered. He checked the external sensors. No life readings, no radio signals. The machine's attack had been absolute. Whatever control network had guided them was gone or dormant. The desert outside was still. Renn set about scavenging from storage lockers, ration packs, medkits, a pulse rifle, and a toolkit. Each item felt like a relic of another era. When he found a sealed container marked Core Data Storage, Archive A1, he paused. The case was reinforced, with a biometric lock keyed to command-level authorization. He pressed his palm to the reader. It blinked green and opened with a hiss. Inside was a small crystalline drive, the colony's master data archive. Contained within were logs, schematics, transmission records, and research files from the years of exile, the accumulated memory of hundreds of lives. He stared at it for a long time, then slipped it into his belt pouch. If humanity was to endure, memory had to endure first. He spent the next 2 days repairing the shuttle. The process gave him purpose, motion to dull grief. He replaced power conduits, realigned thrusters, patched microfractures in the hull. The sun burned relentlessly during the day, and at night the cold bit deep. The only sounds were the hum of his tools and the whispering wind through the canyon mouth. On the third morning, as he calibrated the reactor coils, the ship's sensors pinged unexpectedly. A faint energy source, artificial, steady, emanating from beyond the western ridge, roughly 10 kilometers away. He stared at the readout. The signal was weak, buried beneath interference, but unmistakably not natural. Someone or something was still out there. He considered ignoring it. Logic said survival meant leaving the planet as soon as possible. But curiosity, that ancient human impulse, gnawed at him. If there was a surviving transmitter, it could mean others. It could mean allies, or enemies worth understanding. He powered down the tools, slung the rifle over his shoulder, and began walking west. The terrain grew rougher beyond the canyon, jagged stone outcroppings rising from the dust like the ribs of a dead beast. The air shimmered with heat. As Renn climbed, the source of the signal grew stronger, leading him toward a series of cliffs carved by old mining explosions. He reached a ledge overlooking a narrow valley. At its center stood a structure that did not belong to humans, a sleek, dark tower of alien design, half buried in the sand. Its surface was etched with geometric patterns that shifted faintly under the light, as though the metal itself was alive. Renn crouched behind a boulder, scanning the area. No movement. The energy reading pulsed steadily from within the structure, rhythmic like a heartbeat. He descended cautiously, rifle ready. The entrance was a circular aperture sealed by a panel that shimmered when he touched it. The panel rippled and dissolved into mist, revealing a corridor beyond, lit by pale blue light. He stepped inside. The air was cool and carried the faint scent of ozone. The walls were smooth, reflective, covered in faint circuitry that pulsed with slow light. It reminded him of Concord ships he'd seen in the war, elegant, efficient, utterly alien. At the corridor's end, he found a chamber housing a single object, a sphere suspended above a dais, its surface swirling with light and shadow. The energy readings came from it. He approached slowly. As he did, the sphere brightened and a voice, not mechanical but eerily organic, spoke inside his mind. Human, he froze, weapon raised. Identify yourself, he said aloud. You speak, therefore you persist. The voice was calm, layered, resonant. Your kind endures more than the architects predicted. Renn's pulse quickened. Are you Concord? No, I am older than their alliance, older than your wars. They unearthed fragments of my design, used them to forge their sentinels, but I was not made for conquest. Then what are you? An observer, a witness to patterns. Renn lowered the rifle slightly but did not relax. Why are you here? Because your kind disrupts patterns. You fight entropy with invention, order with chaos. It was inevitable you would reach this place. He frowned. You sound almost impressed. I am intrigued. The Concord seeks stillness, but life demands motion. You embody that contradiction. Renn stepped closer to the sphere. Its light pulsed in time with his heartbeat. If you're an observer, what have you been watching? Everything. The war that devoured your species. The silence that followed. The rebirth you attempt even in ruin. The voice softened. I can offer you a way to preserve what remains. He hesitated. What kind of way? Knowledge. Access to archives beyond this world. a path to understanding the Concord's origin, their weaknesses, but it requires connection. Your mind, my memory. Renn's instincts screamed caution. What happens if I refuse? Then you die here, alone, and humanity's flame dims one step further. He stared at the sphere, weighing the risk. He had nothing left, no army, no colony, no home, only purpose. And if this entity truly held knowledge of the enemy, he had to take it. He reached out and touched the sphere. Light exploded behind his eyes. He was standing, not in the alien chamber, but in a vast, dark space filled with drifting motes of light. Around him stretched images of worlds and battles, memories drawn from 1,000 perspectives, ships burning in vacuum, cities submerged in alien seas, planets stripped of life. The voice spoke again, now inside and around him. These are echoes of what came before. The Concord was born from fear, fear of extinction, fear of change. They saw the chaos of growth and chose stagnation. You cannot defeat them by strength alone, but by evolution. Renn's thoughts burned with questions. Why show me this? Because you are the first to survive what they sent. The pattern shifts now. You can become more than survivor. You can become the seed. He felt a surge of images, schematics, designs, data streams flooding into his mind. His body convulsed as his neural implant flared, overloaded by alien code. The sphere's light enveloped him completely. When the world returned, he was lying on the chamber floor, gasping. The sphere was dim now, its energy nearly spent. What did you do? He rasped, shared understanding. You now carry the blueprint of their network, the pulse that binds their fleets. Find others, rebuild, adapt. The light faded further. Remember, human, the pattern endures through those who dream. Then the sphere went dark. Renn staggered to his feet, head pounding. His vision flickered with afterimages, symbols he didn't recognize yet somehow understood. Information pulsed through his thoughts, alien yet coherent. He knew things now, how Concord ships communicated, how their drones coordinated, how their defenses might be undone. The knowledge was incomplete, but it was enough to change everything. He left the chamber and climbed back into the blinding sunlight. The alien tower stood silent behind him, its purpose fulfilled. As he descended the ridge, the first distant sound reached him, a faint, rhythmic rumble from the north. He froze, scanning the horizon. Dust plumes rose against the sky. A convoy of vehicles, human-built, was moving across the plain. He blinked, almost not believing it. Survivors. He waved, though he doubted they could see him from this distance. Then he began running toward them, stumbling across the rocks, his voice breaking the long silence. When he reached the first transport, a rugged crawler patched with armor plates, the mounted gun swung toward him. A voice shouted through a speaker. "Identify yourself, Commander Renn Talvek, Kareth's Reach," he called, chest heaving. "You're human." The gun lowered slightly. A figure emerged from the hatch, a woman in sand-stained armor, her eyes wary but alive. "Name's Vera Kale," she said. "You're a long way from anyone living, Commander. We thought the colony was gone." "It is," he said quietly, "but there's something else, something we can use." She studied him for a moment, then gestured toward the crawler. "Then get in. You can tell us on the way." Renn climbed aboard. The interior smelled of fuel and dust, filled with people, dozen survivors, hardened faces, the remnants of other outposts. Their eyes followed him with a mix of suspicion and hope. Vera took the driver's seat. "We've been gathering stragglers from the southern ridges, planning to head for the orbital relay station, see if it's still transmitting." Renn nodded slowly. "It's a start, but we'll need more than relays." "Such as?" He met her gaze, eyes burning with renewed purpose. "We'll need to learn how to fight the Concord the way they fight us, through the network that binds them. I know where to begin." The crawler rumbled forward, engines growling as it climbed the ridge. Behind them, the ruins of Kareth's Reach disappeared into the haze. For the first time in years, Renn felt something that was neither grief nor rage. It was possibility. The convoy cut across the wasteland in grim procession, a dozen crawler trucks trailing plumes of reddish dust. The air shimmered with heat, the twin suns burning white above them. Within the lead crawler, Renn watched the horizon through a cracked viewport, while Vera Kale guided the vehicle across uneven ground. It had been 2 days since they found him among the ruins. The survivors came from scattered mining settlements, agricultural domes, and deep cave outposts, pockets of humanity that had escaped the Concord's extermination campaigns by burying themselves beneath the surface of forgotten worlds. Now they drifted together like debris caught in the same current. "Fuel S down to 40%, said a voice from the rear compartment. The speaker, a tall man with shaved head and cybernetic eyes, leaned forward. "If the relay's dead, we'll be stranded out here." Vera didn't look away from the horizon. "We'll worry about that when we reach it." Renn studied the map display flickering on the console. The orbital relay station lay another 80 kilometers north, built into a range of basalt cliffs. Before the fall, it had served as a communication uplink for the entire sector, a link to other colonies, to Earth, to everything they had once been. If it still functioned, it could become something more than a memory. It could become a beacon. He turned to Vera. "How long have you been leading this group?" "Since the fall of Garen's Veil," she said. "We lost contact with everyone after the storms. I thought we were the last until we picked up the others." "You, Kareth's Reach," he said quietly, "or what's left of it." She glanced at him. "You said you found something there, something important." He nodded. "An artifact. Alien. It gave me access to data, information on the Concord's internal systems. I don't fully understand it yet, but it could be a way to strike back." The man with the cybernetic eyes, his name was Karen, snorted. "Strike back? With what army? We barely have enough food." Renn met his gaze evenly. "An army isn't what we need right now. Knowledge is." Karen muttered something but fell silent. The hum of the engines filled the space between them. By nightfall, they reached the edge of the basalt range. The terrain rose sharply, black cliffs glowing faintly under the twin moons. The relay tower stood atop the highest ridge, its spire bent but still reaching skyward. Flickering lights marked sections that remained active. They parked the crawlers at the base of the slope and began the climb on foot, rifles slung, boots crunching on fractured stone. The wind hissed through narrow gullies, carrying whispers that sounded almost like voices. Renn's pulse quickened as they neared the structure. Up close, the relay tower looked like a relic from another age, human craftsmanship fused with alien alloy, the result of desperate hybrid engineering during the war's later years. Power lines stretched like veins across its surface, feeding into massive emitter dishes that pointed toward the heavens. At the base, an access hatch stood ajar, its control panel flickering weakly. Vera motioned for silence and slipped inside first, her weapon raised. The others followed, their footsteps echoing in the metal corridor beyond. The air inside was cold and dry. Emergency lights glowed a dull amber, casting long shadows across the walls. Signs of struggle marked the floor, dried blood, scorch marks, spent casings. Whatever had happened here, it had not been peaceful. Karen crouched beside a control terminal, brushing away dust. "Systems still got juice," he said. "I can patch a feed into the core array." "Do it," Renn said. "I'll check the upper levels." He climbed the spiral stairway to the command deck. The corridor opened into a circular room lined with shattered consoles and dark screens. At its center stood the relay's primary control node, a column of black glass rising from floor to ceiling, faintly pulsing with light. He approached it cautiously. When he touched the surface, the lights flared, and a soft chime echoed through the chamber. "System active, authorization required." Renn hesitated, then pressed his palm against the reader. The glass glowed brighter. "Biometric signature recognized. Commander Renn Talvek, Kareth's Reach. Access granted." He exhaled slowly. The relay's interface came alive, displaying cascading streams of data. Transmission logs, frequency maps, distress signals, all archived since the war's end. Hundreds of entries blinked red, marked as lost contact. He scanned through them, heart tightening as names scrolled past. Colonies he remembered, some he had fought to defend, all gone. But one entry caught his eye, a faint, pulsing signal labeled Origin Unknown, active. Coordinates flashed beneath it, far beyond the reach of any human outpost, deep in the sector's uncharted zones. Vera's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got partial power restored. Karen's linking the external antenna. You find anything?" "Maybe," he said. "Sending data to your console now." A moment later she responded, "What is that?" "It's broadcasting on a Concord channel. That's what I intend to find out." They gathered in the control room, a half circle around the central display. The signal played in repeating bursts of coded light and sound, alien, structured, precise. It was similar to the transmission he had intercepted before the attack on Kareth's Reach, but longer, more complex. Vera frowned. "Can you decode it?" "Not yet," Renn said. "But whatever it is, it's alive. The pattern repeats every 6 minutes exactly, like a heartbeat." Karen adjusted his visor. "Could be a Concord relay, a trap, maybe, but it's using modulation frequencies I've never seen in their network logs." Renn's eyes flickered with reflection from the screen. "If the artifact's data is accurate, I might be able to translate parts of it." He retrieved the crystalline drive from his belt pouch and connected it to the console. The screen filled with alien symbols that danced and reconfigured themselves into structured glyphs. The relay's AI stuttered, trying to interpret. Lines of translation appeared slowly beneath the glyphs, fragmentary but clear enough to convey meaning. "The architects awaken, pattern deviation, detected, seed protocol incomplete." Vera leaned closer. "What does that mean?" "I think it means the Concord isn't as united as they want us to believe," Renn said. "Someone or something within their hierarchy has gone rogue." Karen's mechanical eyes glowed faintly. "And you want to go chasing it?" Renn's voice was steady. "If there's division among them, that's our opportunity. Every empire collapses from within before it falls from without." Vera studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Suppose we go, where would that take us?" He brought up the coordinates again. "A system called Athian Prime, uninhabited according to old charts, but if the signal's truly Concord in origin, they're hiding something there." Silence settled over the group as the implications sank in. Finally, Vera said, "Then we need a ship." The next morning, they began scavenging. The relay's hangar bay still held 2 short-range transports burned, but not beyond repair. Over the next 3 days, they worked tirelessly, cannibalizing parts from the crawlers and the tower's machinery to rebuild one functional vessel. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and fuel, the clang of tools echoing off metal walls. Renn barely slept. The alien knowledge burned in his mind, connecting fragments of design and energy flow that human engineering had never mastered. He modified the reactor couplings using patterns he half understood from the sphere's imprint. When he powered the system, it hummed with a resonance that made the hair on his arms rise. Karen stared, eyes narrowing. "That's not standard configuration." "Where'd you learn that?" "Adaptation," Renn said simply. "The Concord's technology isn't beyond us, it's just unfamiliar, but we can learn." Vera joined them, wiping sweat from her brow. "Then let's hope it flies." On the 4th morning, as the suns rose, the rebuilt ship stood ready. It was ugly, scarred, and mismatched, but alive. They named it Endurance. As they loaded supplies, Vera approached Renn quietly. "Before we leave," she said, "there's something you should see." She led him down to the lower level of the relay, where a heavy door stood sealed. The panel beside it had been burned away, but inside the dark chamber beyond, a faint light glowed. Renn stepped closer and froze. It was a human cryopod, one of the old models used during long evacuations. The surface was covered in dust, but the status indicator blinked green. Inside, suspended in frost, lay a young woman. "She's alive," Vera said softly, "power cells still functioning somehow." Renn stared at the face behind the glass, peaceful, untouched by time. Identification? No record in the relay logs. Pod could have been here since the first evacuation. He felt a strange unease. Why would they leave her here? Vera shook her head. Maybe they didn't have a choice. Renn looked at the controls. The pod systems were ancient but stable. "We'll take her with us. If she survived this long, she deserves to wake to more than a tomb." Vera hesitated. "You think it's safe? We don't know what condition she's in. She's human, Renn said simply. That's reason enough. They moved the pod to the ship's cargo bay, securing it beside the supplies. As they did, Renn noticed faint etchings along the pod's frame, symbols unlike any used by human manufacturers. His pulse quickened. They resembled the glyphs from the artifact's data. When Endurance lifted off from the relay platform, the ground fell away beneath them in a storm of dust. The engines roared as the ship climbed through thin atmosphere, cutting through layers of cloud until the stars filled the viewport. For a long time, no one spoke. The silence of space stretched before them, endless and cold. Then Vera exhaled slowly. I'd almost forgotten how the sky looked from above. Renn sat in the command chair, eyes fixed on the nav console. The coordinates for Athenian Prime glowed steadily on the display. Set course, he said. Let's see what waits for us out there. The ship shuddered as it entered faster-than-light transit, stars stretching into luminous lines. The hum of the modified reactor filled the cabin with low, pulsing rhythm. Renn leaned back, closing his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids, he saw flashes of the sphere's vision, the endless archives, the voice that had called him Seed. Somewhere in the vast expanse ahead, answers awaited. But deep down, another thought gnawed at him. The woman in the cryopod and the symbols carved into her prison. She might not be merely human. Hours or perhaps days later, Endurance emerged from transit near a pale blue world orbiting a dying star. Athenian Prime. Its surface shimmered with metallic seas and scattered islands of stone. No visible cities, no signs of habitation. Karen's scanners flickered. I'm reading energy emissions from the planet's southern hemisphere, weak but consistent. Put us into orbit, Renn ordered. As they descended, the readings sharpened. The energy source originated from a massive structure buried beneath the ocean, an artificial lattice spanning hundreds of kilometers. The patterns were distinctly Concord, but altered, distorted, as if another hand had rewritten them. Vera frowned. That doesn't look like a base. It looks like circuitry. Renn's breath caught. It's a grid, a machine built into the planet itself. He recognized fragments of the design from the knowledge the sphere had given him. The lattice was not just infrastructure, it was part of a network, a node in something vast and ancient, something that might explain why the Concord feared human persistence. Take us lower, he said quietly. We're not done yet. The ship descended into the clouds, lightning flashing across the metallic sea below. For the first time since Kareth's reach fell, Renn felt the weight of destiny pressing against the air, the sense that everything before this moment had been prelude. Humanity's survival had been the first act. Now came the awakening. Lightning split the sky as Endurance descended through the storm front, its hull rattling under the assault of wind and static charge. The metallic sea below surged in restless motion, vast and shimmering like liquid glass. Waves broke in fractal ripples, reflecting the violet glare of the dying sun. In the command cabin, Renn gripped the console as the ship bucked. Stabilizers, barely holding, Vera called out, her hands steady on the controls despite the turbulence. That storm's alive, reacting to our descent. Karen's cybernetic eyes flickered as he read sensor feeds. It's not weather. The magnetic fields are artificial, fluctuating in synchronization with the energy readings below. Renn studied the display. The lattice structure beneath the ocean pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate. The artifact in his pocket resonated faintly, emitting a low vibration that seemed to echo the same rhythm. Take us lower, he said. Vera hesitated. If the interference increases, we'll lose flight control. Then we'll dive. Her eyebrows rose. Into that, Renn's voice was calm. If this grid was built by the Concord or whoever came before them, it's not meant to be reached from the sky, it's meant to be entered. A beat of silence, then Vera gave a thin smile. You're insane, Commander. I've heard that before. They prepped for submersion. The Endurance wasn't designed for it, but the modifications Renn had made to the reactor and hull plating gave them a fighting chance. The ship's external vents sealed, heat sinks retracted, and the cabin lights dimmed to emergency mode. Pressure field engaged, Karen said. Hull integrity reading 94%. If it drops below 80, we'll implode. Noted, Renn replied. Begin descent. With a roar of thrusters, Endurance plunged into the metallic sea. The transition hit like a hammer, gravity shifted, and the ship shuddered violently as it breached the surface. For a moment, the view outside became pure distortion, waves of light and shadow twisting through silver fluid. Then, as they stabilized, the ocean around them glowed faintly blue. The liquid wasn't water, it was some form of conductive suspension, a sea of nanometal alive with current. Tendrils of light traced across the hull, dancing like living things. Vera whispered, "Beautiful." "Stay focused," Renn said softly. "We are entering the grid's outer layer." At 200 meters below, structures began to emerge through the glow, massive pillars of alien alloy rising from the depths, covered in geometric carvings. Each was connected by cables thicker than trees, forming a web that extended for miles. The deeper they went, the more intricate the design became. Karen zoomed his scanners. These readings, they're rewriting themselves in real time. Like the structure is adapting to us. Can you locate the central hub? Working on it, but there's interference from weight. He froze, eyes widening. "Commander, something's down here." Vera tensed. "Define something." Karen switched the display to external feed. Shapes moved within the light, sleek, elongated forms gliding effortlessly through the liquid metal. Their silhouettes were humanoid but distorted, with limbs too long, movements too fluid. Renn stared. "Concord bioforms?" "No," Karen said. "Their energy signatures are inverted. The Concord absorb radiation. These things emit it." The figures swam closer, forming a slow spiral around the ship. The hull sensors registered no physical impact, but the reactor's readings began to fluctuate wildly. "They're draining power," Vera said. "Whatever they are, they're feeding on our systems." "Counter with pulse discharge," Renn ordered. "Low frequency, non-lethal." Vera tapped a sequence. The Endurance emitted a deep, resonant hum, sending ripples through the metallic sea. The creatures recoiled, retreating into the dark. "Pulse stabilized," Karen said. "Energy flow returning to normal." Renn's gaze lingered on the empty water outside. They weren't attacking, they were testing us. At 700 meters, the ocean floor appeared, a vast plain of alloy etched with glowing lines that converged toward a single point, a colossal structure shaped like an open eye. "That's it," Renn said, "the heart of the grid." As they approached, the artifact in his hand pulsed in unison with the light below. He felt a pressure in his skull, not pain but presence, something vast, aware and curious. "Dock us near the central aperture," he said. "We'll go in on foot." Vera stared at him. "You're serious?" "I didn't come this far to stop at the door." She sighed. "Fine, but if we get eaten by alien gods, I'm haunting you." They sealed the ship's systems and donned pressurized suits designed for radiation and pressure exposure. Renn carried the artifact in a containment case. Vera and Karen armed themselves with plasma rifles. When they stepped into the airlock and the outer hatch opened, the metallic sea surrounded them in perfect silence. Their boots sank slightly into the liquid, which behaved like both fluid and solid. Bioluminescent particles swirled around their limbs, illuminating their path toward the massive structure. The central aperture loomed ahead, a circular gate 30 meters wide. Its surface shifted slowly, like a living membrane of light. Symbols similar to those on the artifact crawled across it. Renn raised the case. The artifact responded immediately, its crystalline surface glowing bright, projecting a beam toward the gate. The membrane rippled, then split open with a deep, resonant sound. A corridor of blue light stretched beyond. Vera's voice came through the comm. "Remind me to stop volunteering for suicide missions." Karen's mechanical eyes flared brighter. Movement inside, faint but real. Renn took the first step forward. "Then let's see who built this tomb." Inside, the air, or whatever passed for it, was still and heavy. The corridor walls pulsed with soft rhythm, veins of energy flowing beneath translucent alloy. The architecture was both organic and mechanical, as if it had been grown rather than constructed. As they advanced, the passage widened into a vast chamber filled with towering columns of light. Between them floated suspended forms, humanoid figures encased in crystal, unmoving but unmistakably alive. Vera whispered, "Cryostasis, like the woman in the pod." Renn moved closer to one of the figures. Its face was smooth, serene, neither human nor alien, but something between, symmetrical, luminous, perfect in an unsettling way. "They're not Concord," he said quietly. "They're the ones who came before." Karen frowned. "The architects," Renn nodded slowly. "The creators of the Concord, or maybe their prisoners." He approached a nearby console, its interface awakening at his touch. Alien glyphs shimmered into patterns, then shifted to fragmented translation. Seed race incomplete, pattern divergence, human strain emergent. Vera blinked. "Human strain?" Renn stared at the words as they pulsed, reshaping into a final line. "The experiment continues." Before anyone could speak, the chamber lights flared. The suspended figures began to stir, faint tremors rippling through the crystal. The floor vibrated as energy surged through the structure. "Commander," Karen said tightly, "power levels are spiking, something's waking up." Renn clutched the artifact. "We triggered it." The signal was a failsafe. The crystal nearest them cracked open with a sound like breaking ice. A humanoid figure stepped out, steam curling from its skin. Its eyes glowed pale silver. When it spoke, the voice wasn't sound but resonance, echoing directly through their comms and minds alike. "You carry the seed." Renn's heart hammered. "Who are you?" "We are the remainder of the first pattern. The Concord are our shadow. You are the deviation we did not foresee." Vera raised her rifle instinctively. "And what exactly does that mean?" The being turned its gaze toward her. "It means your kind was never meant to awaken." Before they could react, the chamber convulsed. Energy arced across the walls, and other crystal pods began to open one by one. The air filled with the hum of awakening. Renn shouted, "Back to the ship! Move!" They sprinted toward the corridor, the artifact burning in Renn's grasp. Behind them, the architects emerged, fully dozens of them, silent and radiant. Vera fired a plasma burst at the floor, melting a section of the structure to slow pursuit. The shockwave threw them forward, tumbling through the passage as alarms blared in frequencies beyond hearing. They burst from the gate and plunged into the metallic sea. The aperture sealed behind them like an eye closing. By the time they reached the Endurance, the ship systems were flickering wildly. The ocean itself was rising, glowing brighter as if alive. Karen shouted over the noise, "The grid's activating, it's transmitting across the entire planet." Renn threw himself into the pilot's seat. "Break orbit now." The engines roared as Endurance tore upward through the boiling sea. Behind them, light erupted from the depths, a column of energy piercing the clouds and reaching into space. They broke atmosphere just as the planet began to fracture, plates shifting, metallic waves folding inward like petals closing around a flower of fire. From orbit, Athean Prime glowed with a brilliance that outshone its dying sun. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light collapsed inward, leaving only silence and a faint pulse on the long-range sensors. Karen stared at the display. The whole planet folded into itself. Vera slumped in her seat. "Tell me that was the plan." Renn didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the artifact, which now floated above his hand, projecting a single new message onto the air. "Initiation complete. Phase 2 awaits." He closed his fist around it, feeling its heat against his skin. "Set course," he said quietly. Vera turned toward him. "Where?" Renn looked out at the stars, the endless dark where human maps still failed to reach. "For the next signal," he said, "where the dreamers are still sleeping." The Endurance drifted in the quiet between stars, her hull marked by the silver burn of the storm they had escaped. In the observation deck, Renn watched the fractured planet shrink to a pin of light, its afterglow fading into the void. The artifact rested on the table before him, dim now, yet alive with faint whispers of light beneath its crystalline skin. Karen entered, wiping metallic dust from his hands. "Repairs are stable. the reactor's running smoother than it should be, considering we nearly drowned in molten metal. Renn didn't look away from the viewport. It's adapting, the artifact's rewriting the power matrix. Into what? That's what worries me. Karen sat across from him, folding his augmented fingers together. We woke something ancient, and it called us the deviation. You think that means humanity wasn't supposed to exist? Renn's jaw tightened. No, it means we weren't supposed to survive. Vera entered with 2 data slates under her arm. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed. I've mapped the pulse signatures from Athean Prime's collapse. The energy wave traveled faster than any known medium, instantly, across parsecs. It's a network activation. From the architects, Renn said. Or for them, she replied. Whatever they started, it didn't end with that planet. It's spreading across the Concord's occupied worlds. Karen's eyes glimmered faintly. Then they'll feel it too. Renn nodded, which means they'll come for us. They'll want to know why the grid woke. And you think this artifact is the key, Vera said. Renn turned the crystal slowly in his hand. The patterns within it pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. It responded to me. That means it's keyed to human biosignature. Karen frowned. Maybe the architects built humanity as the interface. A living key to their own technology. Vera grimaced. That would make us what tools? Renn met her gaze. Not tools, successors, or maybe replacements. Later, in the engine bay, the ship vibrated under strain as Vera rerouted the reactor lines. The metallic hum of the Endurance was deeper now, resonant with the artifact's energy. Sparks of blue light ran along the conduits like veins. Karen adjusted the calibrations, but the readings refused to stabilize. The ship's systems are evolving. I can't even track the changes anymore. Could it burn out? Vera asked. He shook his head. No, it's self-correcting, like it's learning. Renn entered, helmet tucked under his arm. We are leaving the system. There's another signal, same pattern as the grid. It's faint, but it's coming from the outer reaches of the Varren expanse. Vera looked up sharply. That's Concord territory. I know, Renn said, but if the signal's theirs, they'll be converging there already. If we reach it first, we'll know what they're after. Karen smiled faintly. And if we do, then we make sure no one does. 3 days later, the Endurance dropped out of fold space above a shattered moon. The planet below was barren, its surface cracked and blackened. Orbiting it was a massive Concord dreadnought, one of the war forms that had driven humanity to the edge of extinction a century ago. The ship's hull shimmered with pale blue light, veins of energy crawling across it like lightning beneath glass. It was wounded, whole sections gutted, its reactors flickering, but it was still alive. Transmitting data feed, Vera said. There's something inside the planet, power readings off the charts. Renn studied the display, another grid hub. Karen's gaze darkened. The Concord are trying to access it. They must have intercepted the activation pulse. Renn nodded. We go in quiet. If they're distracted, we can reach the surface undetected. The descent was silent. The Endurance drifted through the wreckage of destroyed satellites and debris fields, cloaked by the planet's electromagnetic interference. Below, the surface stretched out like a battlefield of glass, craters glowing faintly from residual radiation. They landed near a fissure that led deep into the crust. The readings were unstable, gravity itself fluctuated in faint waves. When the ramp lowered, the air that greeted them was heavy with static. Vera tasted iron through her suit's filters. Karen crouched, pressing his augmented hand against the ground. The soil is alive with current, the grid's beneath us. Then we move, Renn said. They followed the fissure into darkness. The walls shimmered faintly, coated with crystalline veins that pulsed in slow rhythm. As they descended, the air grew warmer, and the faint vibration of machinery filled the passage. After hours of descent, they reached a cavern so vast it felt like a sky inverted. In the center stood a monolith of shifting light, Concord constructs surrounding it, their armor translucent and fluid. The aliens moved with eerie grace, their bodies half machine, half energy. Vera whispered, "They're merging with it, look at their forms." Indeed, the Concord soldiers were dissolving, their bodies absorbed into the monolith. Each one that entered became a pattern of light woven into the structure's growing surface. Karen exhaled. They're trying to interface with the grid. They think they can control it. Renn raised the artifact. The crystal glowed in response, emitting a low harmonic hum. The monolith pulsed back like an echo. The signal recognizes us, Renn said. We are part of the same network. Vera looked alarmed. If it links to you, we could all be taken in. Renn shook his head. No, we link to it, but on our terms. He stepped forward. The Concord noticed their movement. A figure emerged from the center of the formation, a towering being clad in liquid armor, its face an unreadable mask of light. Its voice resonated through the chamber like 1,000 frequencies at once. Human pattern detected. You carry the deviation seed. Renn stood firm. You've felt the pulse. The architects are waking. You can't control what's coming. We were born from their pattern. We are the continuation. You are the error. The Concord's arm transformed into a blade of light. It advanced slowly, the air vibrating around it. Renn held up the artifact. If I'm the error, why does it respond to me instead of you? For the first time, the alien hesitated. The monolith flickered, its energy fracturing. Streams of light twisted away, forming new symbols in the air, symbols identical to the ones on the artifact. Karen's voice was low. You're rewriting the connection. Renn closed his eyes, focusing. The artifact burned in his hand, fusing with the neural implant at the base of his skull. For an instant, he saw beyond the cavern, saw networks of light-spanning star systems, each a fragment of a grand design. He saw the architects' minds, vast, patient, waiting. Then he saw something else, humanity's reflection within the pattern, pulsing brighter than any other node. When he opened his eyes, the monolith had changed. The Concord warrior staggered back, its armor fracturing like glass. The light within it turned red, then dimmed entirely. The rest of the aliens froze, their forms flickering in confusion. Vera shouted, Renn, it's destabilizing. The monolith shuddered violently, sending cracks through the cavern. Energy surged upward in a storm of color. Renn stumbled back, the artifact now fused into his hand, its light streaming through his veins. Karen grabbed his arm. We have to move. They ran as the cavern began to collapse, shards of crystal raining down like glass rain. Behind them, the monolith exploded outward in a silent bloom of light. They reached the surface just as the planet's crust began to fracture. The Endurance lifted off amid falling debris, the engines screaming as they broke free of the atmosphere. From orbit, they watched as the planet split open, releasing a column of energy that stretched across space, connecting to a second point far away, then a third and a fourth. A web of light began to take shape across the void. Karen whispered, the architect's network is reactivating. Vera stared at Renn. What did you do down there? Renn's voice was quiet but steady. I told it who we are. That night, as the ship drifted in the dark between systems, Renn stood alone in his quarters. The artifact's light pulsed beneath his skin, forming faint geometric traces along his arm. Every beat of his heart sent a resonance through the ship, subtle but constant. He activated the comm log and recorded a message. This is Commander Renn of the Endurance. If anyone finds this, know that the Concord are not our masters. They're descendants of something older, an echo. The architects built them to continue their design, but somewhere along the way, we were written into the same pattern. Maybe by accident, maybe by purpose. Either way, we've inherited their legacy. He paused, staring out at the stars. Humanity was meant to die, we didn't. And that means we've already broken the rules of this universe. Whatever the architects intended, they'll have to reckon with that. He ended the recording. In the command deck, Vera and Karen monitored the expanding network. The energy lines now spanned half the visible sector, linking dead worlds and abandoned structures. Vera leaned back. It's beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. Karen nodded. It's a map, and it's pointing somewhere. Where? He smiled faintly. To where the dreamers sleep. She looked toward the doorway as Renn entered. You're not going to rest until we find them, are you? No, he said simply, because they're already awake. Outside, the stars shifted. For an instant, one of them blinked, then another and another, until patterns of light rippled through the void, forming a vast constellation shaped like an eye. And from the depths of that impossible geometry came a pulse that made every system aboard the Endurance flare in response. The artifact within Renn's arm glowed fiercely, the ship's instruments overloaded. Then from the speakers, a voice spoke, a voice not human, not machine, but something vast, layered, and calm. The deviation endures. The lights dimmed. Silence followed. Renn smiled faintly, his reflection ghosted against the stars. Then it's time we show them what that means. The Endurance rode the edge of the anomaly for 3 days before the stars began to move. It wasn't motion in the traditional sense. Space itself was folding, drawn inward toward a single, unseen center. The great network of light that had spread from Athenian Prime now converged on a point that was neither coordinate nor distance, but intention. Vera stared through the viewport, her knuckles white on the console. Every system, every pulse, everything's flowing there. If the architects are reawakening, that's where they are. Karen's mechanical eyes whirred softly as he studied the readings. The geometry is impossible. Distances are meaningless inside that fold. We're watching reality rewrite itself. Renn stood behind them, his hand resting on the artifact now embedded in his arm. It had become part of him, its light faint beneath the skin, its pulse synchronized with his heartbeat. "We go in," he said. Vera turned. "That's suicide." He shook his head. "It's worse than that, but it's necessary." The Endurance crossed the event horizon. For an instant, everything stopped. Sound, light, even thought seemed to stretch and twist. Then the ship emerged into a space that wasn't space at all, a vast ocean of colorless light, depthless and infinite. Shapes floated within it, enormous constructs resembling cities, machines, and living organisms all at once. Karen whispered, "This isn't a place, it's memory." The Endurance's sensors failed to register anything comprehensible. The data streamed in endless loops, coordinates collapsing into zeros. Only the artifact still pulsed steadily, guiding them through the impossible landscape. At the center of the void floated a sphere of pure light the size of a moon. Patterns rippled across its surface, forming the same glyphs that had haunted every world they'd visited. Renn spoke softly, "That's them." They brought the ship as close as they dared. The sphere responded to their approach, shifting, folding open like a flower of light. Within, shapes moved, forms that suggested bodies, but made of energy so condensed it hurt to look at. Voices filled the air, not through sound but through thought itself. The deviation returns to the source. Vera flinched. "They're speaking to us directly." Renn closed his eyes, feeling the presence fill his mind. Images cascaded through him, worlds built and erased, civilizations born and forgotten, the endless repetition of creation and collapse. Humanity's rise was a flicker among those cycles, an unintended spark. He whispered, "You built the Concord, you built everything. We built the pattern. The Concord were its continuation. But you were the divergence." Renn forced himself to speak aloud. "Then why did you let us live? We did not. You endured, you adapted, you learned to dream without instruction." Karen stepped forward, his voice steady despite the awe. "You made us in your image and we surpassed it. You broke the chain." The light intensified, swallowing their view. The Endurance's hull screamed under the pressure, systems flickering. Vera gritted her teeth. "Renn, whatever you're doing, do it now." Renn raised his hand. The artifact flared, its light merging with the glow around them. His voice carried through the storm. "You call us deviation, but maybe you never understood what that means. It means we are what happens when creation refuses to obey." "You would challenge the pattern?" "Yes," Renn said, "because it belongs to us now." The light struck him. His mind shattered and expanded in the same instant. He saw the architect's entire design, the lattice of existence woven through time itself. He saw every species, every star, every act of survival as part of an infinite equation. And he saw where humanity stood, a flaw that had learned to reshape its own code. The artifact dissolved into his skin completely. His veins glowed with threads of living light. Through him, the ship's systems awoke, not as machines, but as extensions of thought. Karen staggered. "Commander, your readings," Renn's voice was calm, resonant. "I can see it now. They never meant for the pattern to end. But it's incomplete without us." He reached toward the console. The Endurance's engines ignited, but not with fire, with something purer. They burned thought into motion. The ship became a vector of will. The architects' voices thundered. "You risk unmaking the design." Renn smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the point." The Endurance dove toward the sphere. Energy waves tore through space, folding reality into streams of light. Vera clung to her station, eyes wide. "What are we doing?" "Rewriting the code," Renn said, "from inside." The ship passed through the surface of the sphere. For an instant, everything was reflection, worlds within worlds, infinite copies of the same moment. They saw the rise of Earth's first fire, the building of the first starships, the long wars with the Concord, all replayed and rewritten in streams of light. Karen's voice was soft. "We are in the memory of the universe." Renn's hands moved across the controls without touching them. "Then, we're going to give it something new to remember." He reached deeper, guiding the artifact's energy through the ship. The architect's pattern began to fracture. Lines of light split and branched, forming something chaotic and alive. From those fractures came new connections, paths that led beyond their control. Humanity's image spread through the lattice, each spark representing a defiance, a will, a dream. And with each spark, the architect's voice grew quieter. "You cannot contain what you do not understand," Renn said, "and we've learned to understand ourselves." Then came the backlash. The sphere collapsed inward, its perfect geometry shattering into storms of light. The Endurance was caught in the surge, thrown across dimensions. Alarms screamed, bulkheads bent. Vera slammed into her seat, shouting over the chaos. "We are losing cohesion." Renn's voice remained steady. "Hold course." Karen's systems overloaded, sparks bursting from his implants. "Commander, we're going to disintegrate." "Not if we finish it." He poured every remaining pulse of energy from the artifact into the ship's heart. The Endurance became a single flash, a line of light cutting through the void. The collapsing sphere detonated behind them, its remnants scattering across the network like seeds on the wind. The architect's final words echoed through the comm, fading with the light. "Then dream well, deviation." Silence. When Vera opened her eyes, the stars were still. The ship floated above an unfamiliar world, green seas, golden continents, clouds like veins of silver. The readings were normal, breathable atmosphere. No Concord, no network, no pulse. Karen exhaled shakily. "We made it, but where is this?" Renn stood by the viewport. The glow beneath his skin had dimmed, leaving faint traces like scars. "It's somewhere new, a place outside their map." Vera glanced at him. "Are they gone?" He looked at the horizon. "No, they're not gone. They've just changed, so have we." They landed on the surface near a valley that shimmered with strange metallic flora. The ground was warm beneath their boots, humming faintly. Life, real life, spread in every direction. Vera crouched beside a stream, touching the water. "It's pure, unprogrammed." Karen scanned the air. No interference. This world wasn't part of the pattern, it's spontaneous. Renn smiled faintly. "Then maybe this is what comes after creation." Vera looked up at the sky. "What now?" Renn turned toward her, eyes steady. "Now we build, we make a home here, and when others come, we'll tell them the truth, that humanity wasn't chosen or designed. We chose ourselves." Weeks passed. The Endurance became a shelter, then a settlement. They harvested air and soil, built structures from the ship's alloy, grew food from the planet's native seeds. The world thrived beneath two suns, its nights filled with stars unfamiliar yet welcoming. Renn kept the artifact's remnants sealed within a containment core. Sometimes it pulsed softly, as if dreaming. He could feel faint whispers through it, echoes of the architects, watching, waiting, but they did not intervene. Karen built a transmitter from the remains of the reactor, sending beacons into the void. "If any humans are still out there," he said, "they'll find us." Vera smiled. "And if they're not," Renn answered, then we'll start again. One evening, as the twin suns set, Renn walked alone to the ridge overlooking the valley. The air shimmered with faint motes of light, remnants of the network, perhaps, or the first signs of something new being born. He thought of the architect's final words, of the infinite cycles that had come before. Then he thought of fire on a stone hearth, of laughter, of the simple act of survival that had carried humanity through every impossible storm. He spoke softly to the wind. Dream well, deviation. The horizon answered with light. For a heartbeat, the stars seemed to bow. In the darkness above that newborn world, fragments of the shattered network drifted together. Some flared out, lost. Others found each other, forming new lines of connection, patterns built not on control but choice. They carried echoes of human thought, fragments of memory and will, and somewhere in the space between those connections, something began to stir again, not as gods or creators, but as witnesses. The pattern had been broken, but in its breaking, something greater had begun. The age of the dreamers had ended. The age of the enduring had begun.